Good morning. This meeting is being recorded, and if anyone from the public would like to make public comment, please do so by signing up for the chat by 9 a.m.
Sorry, guys, but
Hey, Evelyn,
hey,
John.
I spent too much time looking for links, and now I'm not situated, so I need a minute. Okay. I had notes on somewhere else, and now I can't find them. All right, we'll figure this out. All right. Good morning, all. Can we please get a quorum before I start with my work remarks in the agenda?
So Ken, I'm just going to read your last name, Arano Ortiz.
Yes.
Zamara Arenas is not going to be here. Navjeet Bal.
I'm here.
Hyler.
Here.
Jeff Hawkins will not be here as well. And David Leonard.
Here.
And Rush. I see him.
All right. Do we have a quorum, Pamela?
Yes. Senator Rush. I can see him on the screen. I'm not sure if he got knocked off.
Raise your hand, Senator Rush.
There he is.
I see him.
I'm sorry I'm here. I apologize.
Thank you. Well,
Sorry about that.
All right, so let's go. So welcome, good morning, everyone. Let's start with our opening statement. And you can see in the screen, the trustees of the Boston Public Library reaffirm our commitment to racial equity and to principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion more broadly. The library is formally committed to becoming an anti-racist organization in response to systemic racism, inequity, and injustice prevalent in our society. We acknowledge also that the Boston Public Library Central Library stands on a land that was once a water-based ecosystem providing sustenance for the indigenous Massachusetts people, and it's a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among nations. We are committed to land acknowledgements for all locations in which we operate. We reaffirm this commitment to set the context of our planning, deliberations, and public engagement will take place from the spirit of welcome and respect found in our motto, free to all. So we have a packed agenda today, and we need to move swiftly. We're going to start with the minutes. We have our standard annual contracts, and we're going to review the budget, and then we have a series of contracts to go through. And we also have an interview scheduled for the approval in audit review firms finalists based on our RFP, new business, and public comment. So do we need to reorganize this based on timings, Pamela?
we know all of, and just so you know, we did defer all of the annual contracts to just be heard at the full board meeting. So we will not be going through the annual votes today.
So that's section.
It didn't even put it on the agenda. It's
You
not
didn't even put it on the agenda. Okay, so that was going to be even a longer agenda. Oh,
Yep. So
so let's.
So
Okay.
if we can just start with the votes, we should be in good shape.
Okay, so we're skipping D, it's what we're saying. Because I see it on the old agenda. Anyways,
No,
no? All right, so let's review and approval of the minutes. Everybody should have received it and reviewed. Can I please get a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any questions? Any edits, recommendations? If not, can I please get a roll call for a vote?
Ron Ortiz,
Yep.
Bob,
Yes.
Tyler,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
and Rush.
Yes.
So move.
So review and approval of annual contracts with deferred to annual meeting. So these are our normal, we're not talking about them. We'll review in the full trustee board meeting.
Correct.
So the next one, the next item, Ellen, the proposed budget.
Yes, ma'am. So we have up the maintenance budget, which we reviewed at the last meeting, just as a reminder. But Pamela, why don't we advance to the mayor's submitted budget? So the mayor's recommended budget includes additional funding for 7 new positions. One is a high-level AFSCME position that is in response to the data breach we had last year. The other are 6 positions for the branches. We got $250,000 for that. We have a series of positions that we're looking at. Priscilla Foley and her team will make some recommendations to David on which of the ones that they would like to see, and he will obviously make the final decision on that. They put about $63,000 in for a green electricity initiative, which I believe they'll be managing centrally, and we'll get more information from that. And then those are the increases. Those are the new initiatives from Mayor Wu. As I said before, our budget will go up once the contracts settle with the unions, but that is, and the city council has some opportunity to make recommendations for differences in this budget, but we think this is probably close to what we will see our final passed budget be in June.
Questions?
Yeah, Ellen, technically it was not a data breach per se, but it was a security attack. I just want to be careful about use of language on the record.
Yeah. Any questions?
Ellen, any sense of how this compares to other parts of the city's budget?
You know, I don't. I can take a
Okay.
look at it before next week and send you some information if you'd like, but I did not look at other budgets.
Just curious, because, you know, obviously a budget is for mayor's first budget, kind of want to get a sense of how she's approaching the library vis-a-vis other institutions within the city or agencies.
When are the, David, when are the budget meetings with city council?
So our hearing, the library's hearing, is actually the same day as the full trustees meeting. So it will be the afternoon of May 24th, if any of the trustees would like to watch virtually or attend in person. It will be an in-person hearing.
Yeah, for those of you who have not attended, I've attended virtually, and it's quite interesting.
I can send the link.
Yeah, that would be great, Pamela. All right, so the vote, if there's no more questions, the vote is to recommend for full approval of the trustees. So, but I switched to Spanish. Can I please get a motion to recommend to the full board?
So moved.
Second?
Second,
All right, roll call, Pamela?
Arano Ortiz,
Yes.
Val,
yes.
Tyler,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
and Rush.
Yes.
All set?
All right, Ellen, moving on to contracts.
First contract is for True Partners. It is a recruitment firm. We posted the research collection manager back in November. We've gotten about 20, 25 responses, none of which are what we consider to be adequate for the position. So we decided that we would like to hire a recruitment firm. We reached out to 6 firms. We heard back from 5. 2 weren't able to accept to put in a bid. I think they're too busy. 1 has gotten out of the business and only does executive coaching now. We got 2 bid responses. 1 was for $70,000. 1 was for $50,000. We accepted the $50,000 one. It is a woman-owned business. I don't think they're registered with the city yet, but with your consent today to move forward, we will ask them to register.
So I do have a question.
Okay.
This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to bring diversity to the management team. Is that going to be part of the? Is that going to be part of the ask?
I certainly think we always are looking for diversity.
Okay.
So that would be something we would
Yes,
hope
for
for.
diverse candidate. Yeah. So you know, it requires extra.
Yep.
So Yeah, okay,
That'll be in there. Yes, absolutely.
okay. Any questions regarding the contract for search for our new research collections manager?
Is this a position that you feel confident they'll be able to source some good folks for you, Ellen? Or do they have experience working with libraries?
They have experience working with higher ed and nonprofits, so
Okay.
would fall under in some ways both of those. We haven't had any success on our own. We haven't typically used recruitment firms in the past. I think given some of the challenges we have, particularly on these more specialized position, I think it might be something that we'll try to do more of. It's obviously a cost we hadn't had before, but we think it's going to be worth it because we just haven't had any luck, and we've had some difficulty filling a number of positions.
And given that the portfolio is in the area of research collections and special collections, having a background in the higher educational university environment makes probably more sense than actually having a public library background. So it is a new experiment in some ways, but one that is certainly needed, and if works, we would use again in the future.
Great.
Should we have similar problems.
And we have, just to confirm, we have discussed with True Partners that we are looking for a diverse candidate pool and would like to have a diverse hire.
So, I mean, I would imagine that after you award the contract, you would then go through what are the position requirements for this role, I would imagine. All right, we need to go through these separately. We cannot do as a lot. So,
Right.
and Jay, can we also advance slides, please?
Sorry, it's me doing it. That's my fault.
Oh, sorry, Pamela. Okay. All right. All right. So Pamela, can you do a roll call for the vote on this?
Of course. I'm sorry, Alana Ortiz,
Yes.
Bow,
Yes.
Hyler,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
and Rush.
Yes.
So moved.
All right. Next one, Ellen.
The next one is to extend the employee agreement with Kurt Mansberger. And as I think I said at the last time we did this, it's not entirely clear to me that we need a trustee vote because this is not a contract. It is an employee agreement on the city side. But in the interest of transparency, we thought it important to bring it in front of the trustees. We recently lost our web, so we had expected Kurt to leave because we are transitioning to Keith. We recently lost our head web services manager, and so Kurt will focus on some of the higher end technical problems or technical issues, I should say, with our web and public service. And then we're also doing some long-term device lending programs.
And have you guys found how hard it is to find talented IT people? I know we have, Evelyn, I know you're kind of, it's such a competitive environment. We've had recs out and recruiters, everything. It's one of the most competitive areas I've found, trying to find talented people to help in this whole area. Have you found the same thing, Evelyn, on your side?
Yeah, we have tons and tons of positions and more that open that we can't fill fast enough.
It's a very competitive space right now in the technology sector. It's kind of the buyer's market. We were both thrilled and lucky to find Keith Gillette and as our new chief technology officer, and certainly we're thrilled with having him on the team so far. We probably would be ending Kurt's contract if this was purely about the CTO role, as that transition is mostly done to Keith. But with the loss of not just our web services manager, but essentially our whole web team has turned over, we have additional gaps where his skill set can again act as a bridging arrangement until we can fill these positions. So again, we don't anticipate this being a longer term arrangement, but rather a stopgap and allowing us to continue to operate.
Great. It sounds like it makes sense. And he knows the systems, which are great. So good.
Questions? No, all right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Yep, sorry, that's me.
Hmm.
Arano Ortiz,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Heiler,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
and Rush.
Yes.
So moved. Thank you, Keith and Lisa, for joining for questions.
All right. Ellen. Glass.
The glass enclosure, this is over $100,000, so typically would not be approved by finance and audit, but as you likely remember, we asked for a delegation because we bid it and there were a little bit of lack of clarity in some of the bid specs, so we had to put it back out there. We only received one bid. It is a minority-owned business. We are satisfied with the bid. This is to enclose I think it's 11 stations down in KBLIC for privacy and to allow people to use it more as conference rooms and that sort of thing. So we would like to move forward with this contract.
All right, so this is, any questions on this? We talked about this in prior meeting. If there is no questions, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, roll call?
Arano Ortiz,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Heiler,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
and Rush.
Yes.
So moved.
All right, Beth. Pilot project for photography.
Good morning, everyone. I'm presenting for a vote for a pilot project that we would like to undergo with a firm called Picture. This is for our Boston Herald Traveler photo morgue, which is our largest collection of press photography. It's also one of the most, if not the most heavily requested collections within our arts department. This pilot would be funded by the associates of the Boston Public Library, so it's externally funded. In 2020, they had identified $60,000 in their budget for us to undertake a pilot. The collection itself is over somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million images, and we would like to do a pilot project with Picture, which is based in New York, to create a series of work around digitization, creating metadata, delivering those images and metadata for uploaded digital Commonwealth, and providing some preservation work on 15,000 items from that collection. The goal is for us to use that work and sort of our information from this process to help develop a much larger process to make this entire collection over time available to the public.
And Beth, the Traveler, the old Boston Traveler, that was the one that was out in the 1800s, wasn't it? Like started in the late 1800s. I mean, there's got to be a lot of. How far back does it go? If you don't mind me asking really quickly.
So the paper itself has existed since the 19th century, and Kristen Parker, I believe, is on this call as well. She can give some more specifics about the range of the photographic material, but I believe it is all 20th century material. Kristen, are you on?
Yep. Yes, I'm here. Hi. Yes, so the bulk of the collection is 20th century, I would say, and it ends in 1972, but we do have some early albumin prints from about like 1914 thereabouts.
Okay.
And yeah.
Oh, great.
So Beth, when you say it's a pilot program, what's the ultimate goal there? Is it to sort of check out this company to see how they do, or is it?
It is, and it's also to help us project plan. It's such a massive collection. This is at a scale that we have never accomplished. And so we need to understand what the deliverables are so that we can scale. So how are we crafting the metadata? It's a really interesting set of images in the sense that it's not just the photograph on the front, but the backs of these images have incredible detail because they were used multiple times in some cases within the papers themselves. So there's information on how they were used. There are clippings. There's information on how they were cropped. There's dates. There's, in some cases, information on the photographer. And so it's not just about the image itself, but it's how we take all of the attendant metadata and make it accessible, but do it at scale because it is such a large collection. So I think Kristen and Aaron Schmidt, the curator photography, have been really thoughtful about using this to help us think about how we might want to tackle the larger project.
Thank you.
So, Beth, I don't know if I missed it, but what is the scope? If you have such a large collection, what is the scope to accomplish for this contract?
15,000 photos. So the scope is this. The scope will include metadata. It will include digitization. It will include. They're stored in some really rough folders, kind of all packed in together right now. We want to have them essentially put in a longer term preservation status so that we can make sure that they're preserved over time. And then it's also determining how we best get them uploaded to Digital Commonwealth and used.
And it's basically the size of the collection that has triggered our desire to go outside, because this is work that we would normally do internally. But the sheer scale and a little of the uniqueness of the double-sided photograph work is the reason to want to go outside, as well as starting with an actual pilot, correct?
Yes, and we also have undergone some reference checks with work that Picture has done with other institutions. So Aaron Schmidt, the curator of photography, reached out to Harvard University, their fine arts library. They did a project for 200,000 slide transparencies with Picture. And then he also spoke to the Frick collection. Their art reference library did over 700,000 photographs with this group. And so we did some due diligence to make sure that they had experience with this scale so that they were prepared to take on the amount of work that we might be moving forward with.
And where are the funds coming from?
The associates. So they had actually earmarked this within their FY20 budget, but because of the pandemic, work from home, and not being able to project plan with the collection in-house, it's taken us a couple of years to get to a point where we're actually ready to execute on the money. But they encumbered the money with the understanding that when we could get to this project, that they were very excited to have us get forward. And I think the expectation is based on executing on this first pilot that we would then be looking for external funding to support additional work on this collection.
All right, any additional questions? No? All right, so can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
So, yeah, second,
All right, thank you. Roll call?
Rana Ortiz,
Yes.
Bao,
Yes.
Tyler,
yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
and Rush.
Yes.
So moved.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. All right, so these are maintenance contracts, correct, Ellen?
These are our two, and that we have three big contracts that we bid every year, every 3 years. So this is a 3-year bid. The first, and Eamon is on the call for more, if you have more technical or detailed questions for this, because this is much more up his alley than mine. But we have a large contract with MCOR that provides all mechanical, electrical, and plumbing services to us here at Central and across the branches. Their bid this year, it's very, as I say, it's a very large contract, so we have a very limited number of people who can bid on it, companies who can bid on it. We received 2 bids, 7.6 from MCOR and about 11.5 from another company. So we've obviously gone with MCOR. As I said, they are the incumbent, and they have provided this service to us for a number of years.
And what is the duration of the contract?
3 years. It's a 3-year cycle.
Can we do these other lots since they're all maintenance contracts? Pamela?
Well, we can do it and then ask if there's any opposition, but typically I do need to do a roll call, especially on something this size. It'd be best.
Okay, well, we're not approving, we're only recommending to the full board.
Right. You can do it as long as you ask if there's any opposition before you move on.
Okay, got it.
Can I just ask, Ellen, just, I'm curious about, excuse me, the increase in the contract between their prior contract and this one, and not specifically the dollar amount, but how that squares, for example, with a 2% overall budget increase from the city. Just
So
thinking
what
about
happened?
inflation and, you know, how to think about that and how it's starting to potentially affect contracts at the
Sure,
library.
I apologize. I don't have the current amount with me, but I may very well get that information from Jane Sproul as we talk. So this actually is a contract that is not in the city budget, and this happens every 3 years, that the bid comes in after the mayor's recommended budget goes in. So we tell OBM, Office of Budget Management, and they typically adjust the budget when they do the final filing in June. So assuming approval from full trustees in 2 weeks, we will bring this amount back to OBM as the routine is the process we usually follow.
Thank you.
Basically, it gives us an opportunity to ask for whatever the delta is between what was in the last year maintenance budget and whatever the increase is. It may matter how significant that difference is, but nonetheless, that's the opportunity.
And as promised, Jane just got back to me. It was 6.7, the last one. So we'll take a look at what earlier increases were. MCOR is also a unionized environment, so there are always labor increases. They do set it's a fixed cost for 3 years.
Yeah, no, I'm not, it's not so much what the increase is, but just thinking about the impact of inflation on contracts that the library is going to be seeing, and just how to square that away with a 2% increase overall from the city. But I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
At least these prices will be baked in for the next 3 years as a result of this. So there's that.
Exactly.
All right. The elevator.
The elevator, that is similarly, this is to provide service to all the elevators here at Central and for those branches that have it. This too is a 3-year contract. We also will go back to City Hall pending approval and let them know what the increase is, and would expect for that to be included in the final city budget.
And this is also a 3-year?
It is also a 3-year cycle, yes.
And then who were the bidders?
I think it was just this one. I'm sorry, I don't have that, but I think Jane will tell me in just a second.
Would you like me to open Jane's mic?
I don't think Jane is on.
She is. I'll turn it.
Oh, she is? Okay, let's open Jane's mic. Terrific.
Go ahead, Jane. I just opened your mic. You just have to unmute. Go ahead.
Not sure.
Hey, it's Jane. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
So the two bidders for the elevators, one was United Elevator at $447,000, and the second was Fujitech America at $1,274,794.74.
Oh, that's quite a spread.
So a little bit more.
A little bit. Okay. Any questions? Any objections to recommending these two contracts to the full board?
No, I guess the one question I would have, their elevators, and so, you know, and I know the bids were definitely wide and varied, but I mean, we do our due diligence. I'm sorry to ask this, but I know we do, but the due diligence on record safety, you know, complete the task, and you know, always being, you know, there in emergency or punctual. We've done that kind of homework. David, I guess, or who would I?
Amen.
Eamon is on. I'll let him take that question.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, John. Hi, trustees. This is Eamon Shelton, Director of Operations.
Thanks, Eamon.
Yeah, so we have done that due diligence, and we are confident in United Elevators' ability to perform this work, their safety record, as well as their response time. They are the incumbent, so we have experience with them. If there was such a big discrepancy between two companies we hadn't worked with, I would be more concerned. But because we have worked with them, we have confidence in their ability to perform the contract.
Great, thank you.
I would also note that United is a women-owned business.
Thank you. All right, anything else? All right, can I get a motion to approve these 2 maintenance contracts?
So moved.
And actually, it's not approval, we're just recommending full approval to the board. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, Pamela?
Yes, and this is for either of them. Please let me know if any of you have opposition to this. Alana Ortiz,
No opposition, both approved.
Najib Bal,
Agreed to both.
John Heiler,
Agreed.
David Leonard,
Yes.
and Mike Rush.
Yes.
Okay, so moved on both.
All right, and the next one, it's a request to the full board to delegate approval of the fire alarm contract. And then when do we expect that, and do we have an approximate estimate of the contract, Ellen?
Going out now, so we would expect sometime in June, I think.
Sometime in June. Do we know normally how much it is?
Janie, you still on?
Hold on. Jane, just unmute.
So just while Jane is getting on, we usually have you folks vote to recommend and bring it to full trustees. We had a little bit of a hiccup with this one because with the new fire suppression system up in Rare Books, it brought us over the amount that they need for a subcontractor to manage this contract, the fire suppression portion of it. So that kicked us into a new DCAM amount. DCAM is the Division of Capital Assets and Management for the state. And we require a separate sub bid on this one. So we have to redo it. And I think we may break it into 2 pieces. But Jane, please feel free to chime in.
Yep, no, the contract's usually about $95,000 a year. So, $275-ish. But again, the additional suppression systems to have, because this is a chapter 149 contract, so it's considered construction because it's part of the building. If it's a component is 25,000 or more, it needs to have its own separate sub bidder within the DCAM system. So we need to get a fire suppression contractor and then hand that to the fire alarm contractor, who then will incorporate that as part of their bid.
Got it. So it becomes a 2-piece. All right, any more questions regarding this? So that means we'll reconvene sometime in the June timeframe. So you're gonna have to stay in tune with a request for a meeting. If there's no more questions, can I get a motion to approve delegation?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
roll call?
Yes, this is for delegating. It is Alana Ortiz,
Yes.
Bal,
Yes.
Heiler,
Yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
and Rush.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So now we're gonna have an interview for the proposed finalists of the audit firms.
Yeah, I just need, we're just gonna have Sean Monahan reach out to the first auditor. We just need a couple minutes to allow them to join.
And then, so do we, so normally the way we do this is we have one do a short presentation, then open mic for questions. Is that how we're gonna do this again? Ellen?
Yes, sorry, I thought you were talking to Pamela.
No, Ellen.
Yes, that's what we will do. And I think John is leaving shortly, so we will lose our quorum, what we would
No,
propose.
it's not. No, we don't.
No, he's not? Okay, great, terrific.
Of course.
Okay.
That's what I was saying. I still needed the 4. That's what it was. If anyone else had to leave, that's when we would.
Yeah, thank you, Pam and Ellen. And by the way, Evelyn was looking at you, you just couldn't see that through Zoom.
Oh, that was funny. All right, so who's gonna start? Are we gonna start with Matthew?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on one moment. We just need to give them a couple minutes. And what Ellen was saying was we need 4 trustees for a quorum vote. And I know we're going to be losing John, and that means that the 4 that remain, if anyone should happen to jump off before the end of the meeting, before a vote, we would lose quorum. And Matthew Hunt from CLA is joining us now. He's signing in.
And they are the incumbent. They've had the contract for about 11 years.
Matt, feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like.
Hello,
Oh, man, how are you?
good. How's everybody?
We're
Very
doing
good.
good.
Matt, just for efficiency, just let me know when you need me to advance the slides.
Will do.
All right, let's go.
Okay, we ready to roll?
We're ready to roll.
Okay, good to see everybody here this morning. Happy to be here today. Grateful for the opportunity to have worked with the library for several years, and grateful for the opportunity to possibly continue our working relationship. So I could, there's some, Evelyn, you've been, I think, here the whole time that we've been here and everything. So about CLA, and I can sit here and talk about, all the stats of CLA. We're the 8th largest firm in the country, et cetera. But really, I guess the way that I look at it from your perspective is it's sort of more like, well, what have you done for us? I could talk all about CLA. It's what have we done for the library? So I wanted to take a little bit of time, and Pamela, if you want to go to the first slide, just kind of wanted to sort of highlight some of the things that we've been able to bring to the library over the past several years. You think of an audit, it is a compliance requirement, etc. To me, where you get the value out of an audit firm is, okay, well, other than what you needed to give us, which is the audited financial statements, what else have you provided for us over the years? So, through the audit and the manager letter process, I feel as though we've done several things to add value to the library. So just wanted to sort of summarize those. So as you see here on the slide, one of the things that happened during our tenure as auditors is at one point in time, we actually were the tax preparers as well for the library. But several years ago, the library decided they wanted to take on the tax return in-house, had not done that for quite a while. And so that year of transition, we helped the library out with questions, things of that nature, probably put in several hours helping with that transition, and did not charge the library any fees for that. One of the other things that we did early on in our tenure is that there was this separate audit that was being done for the Library of the Commonwealth, the LFC. And after a couple of years of doing that, we sort of looked at it and said, well, why are we even doing this audit? Is it really even necessary? Turns out there was no regulatory or legal reason for us to be doing that audit. And so we decided to stop doing it. So I think that saved the library maybe $10,000 to $15,000 by discontinuing that audit, which we just felt was not necessary. If you look at the next slide, some of the other things that we've been able to do through, again, the management letter process is over the years, we've taken a look at your photo duplication operations and feel as though we've come up with some recommendations over the years that have made those operations more efficient, more automated. The library was actually able to add a new position. One of those was dedicated to the photo duplication operations, and that actually freed up some resources for the library to be able to do their tax return in-house as well. One of the things about our firm that we believe in is seamless capabilities. So what does that mean? Okay, we're your auditor. Well, what else can we be for the library? Where else could we possibly help the library other than just the audit? That's something that we always like to bring to the table with our clients. So a good example of that, several years ago, Ellen, you may remember this, when retail space was opening up at the library, you needed to do some evaluations of some of the potential vendors for that retail space. And we were able to connect Ellen with our group in New Bedford, who did work such as that. So even though I myself personally as the audit partner couldn't help with that, we were able to reach out to somebody at CLA who could. So that's really, I think, one of our strengths is our ability to be able to, when something comes our way that maybe is outside the scope of the audit, we're a large firm. We have so many resources here in Massachusetts. We're able to find other people outside of the audit group that are able to help the library in other ways. If you look at the next slide, We also added IT specialists to the library's audit back in 2014. We don't do that every year, but we did do that every year for several years. And I felt like some good recommendations came from that related to password protection, related to making sure you review terminated employees and making sure that they're no longer active users on your user list. So I think we've come up with some good recommendations there. We've also come up with some, again, good recommendations for the pay for print program. Last year, we probably could put in a good 10 hours reviewing your tax return. Again, you took it on in-house several years ago, but last year we're like, okay, let's get another set of eyes on this. You know, let's make sure we're doing this properly. And yeah, I put one of our more experienced managers in the nonprofit tax group to take a look at the return, came up with a couple of good recommendations that the library was able to implement. And then lastly, you know, again, the most important thing, have we done what we needed to do? Yes, we have. We've met all your deadlines, helped you meet all your reporting deadlines with the city of Boston and with their audit firm every single year that we've been able to serve the library. So next slide, Pamela, sort of looking ahead. So those are some of the things that we've been able to do for the library in our time. If we look at moving forward, you know, I think one of the things that you do when you go out for bid is you say, okay, well, we have had this firm for a period of time. Let's see what else is out there. Maybe we need a fresh set of eyes. Well, I feel like CLA kind of gives you the best of both worlds, because if you retain CLA, you've got the continuity. But as you would see in our proposal, we're actually offering the library with the option of choosing what we're referring to as a rotation team. So if you feel as though there is a need for a fresh set of eyes, yeah, we love CLA, but you know, we're sick of Matt's face, which I wouldn't blame you. You can switch to a new team that we're offering where Jennifer Cook would be your audit director. She's got 16 years of experience, the last 5 years or so devoted to the government nonprofit industry, and also manager Sarah Salvi, who has 11 years of experience. So we can offer you a very experienced group as your rotation team. If you'd like to stick with the current team that you've been working with, and I would stay on as director and Stephanie Jackson would stay on as manager. So again, I feel like I wanted to offer that to the library. If there is a desire or feeling of a need for a fresh set of eyes, you can actually have that with CLA. And then again, in terms of fees, just wanted to point out, despite the current inflationary pressures that we're all experiencing and dealing with, we have kept the fees, future fees, to less than 2% increases over the years. So last slide, Pamela, just again, want to thank the library, regardless of your decision, want to thank you so much for the past several years being able to service the library. I know for myself personally, I've always tried to do my best to give the library everything that I have, and for CLA as a whole, we've always tried to give the library the best top services that we can. So we really appreciate the opportunities we've had over the years. Moving forward, we'd love to continue our relationship. And I think what really does set us apart is our resources. We are a national firm. We have expertise in both the government area, which is important to you because your financial statements are governmental, but you're also a nonprofit organization. And we have a significant presence in the nonprofit industry as well. So I think we've got both sides of the equation covered. We have those value add capabilities that we brought to the table over the past several years. And again, you sort of get the best of both worlds. If you retain CLA, you can have that continuity with the same firm. If you do decide a rotation team, you can do that as well. So again, I wanted to just sort of give an overview of what we've been able to do for the library and where we feel like we could do for the library moving forward. And at this time, open it up for any questions that the panel has.
Questions from the committee? There has to be questions.
Matt, thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciate it and your support for the library over the past few years. One question I have, you know, and I'm at a nonprofit. I'm actually overseeing our finance function there. One of the issues that we've had is honestly just staffing at our outside auditors, and I know we were talking about the challenges in finding IT staff. There's also a real challenge in finding staffing at audit firms, certainly internally in-house as well. Just curious how CLA's kind of faring through those waters.
Yeah, the accounting profession and the CPA profession is one of those industries where you're constantly, I shouldn't say constantly, but you're always feeling like we could use more people, we could use more people. So we've had to navigate through those struggles as well. But one of the things that has really been beneficial to us recently is that we merged with a fairly large firm called Bloom Shapiro in the past year. And they actually have, that's the great thing about merging in with other companies. Sometimes other companies have certain strengths that you can sort of leverage. And one of their strengths is they're very active on campus throughout New England, et cetera. So that's really one of the things that we've ramped up over the past few years, is really trying to build not only a team for current needs, but also a team for the future. So of course you're going to have struggles, and there's people that it's a transient kind of profession. Some people just are in the CPA world for a couple of years to get their license and get it on their resume, and then they want to go. So it's the nature of it. You got to deal with it. But I think we've done a good job of building up our foundation and sort of building up a bench per se to sort of make sure that our resources are what they need to be. So I think for moving forward, there should be no concerns from the library's perspective in terms of resources. We've got at least 400 people here in Massachusetts alone that we can pull from. So from a resource perspective, we feel very strong.
Matt, I'd like.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Matt. No, go ahead.
Just a quick question too. Can you just talk a little bit about sort of the firm's commitment to staying in the government nonprofit space?
Yes, that has been one of our key industries, both government and nonprofit, for many, many years now. We are committed to it. It is not something that we do on the side. Some large firms do delve in government, et cetera, but it's a little bit more geared towards trying to even out their busy seasons and trying to find filler work, essentially. That's not the case with CLA. We're completely dedicated to the government market. If you look here, even locally, the dedication to the government market, I can tell you, since we merged with CLA, previously we were a smaller company. Since we merged with CLA about 8 years ago, we probably tripled in growth. So, we're very committed to this market. We just obtained Commonwealth of Massachusetts as one of our clients. Doesn't get any bigger than that in the government world, at least here. So no, we're very committed to these industries.
Great.
Have been for a long time.
Thank you.
Matt, I'd like you to comment on what you think of as the complexity of our accounting systems. You obviously pointed out during your presentation a couple of areas where some simplification was possible, and a few claims of value add projects along the way. But I'd like to get your gauge on what you believe, how you would rate our current complexity and how that's a match for your firm.
Yeah, I would say in the grand scheme of things, I would say when it comes to, you got to appreciate too here, we're talking about the trustees piece of the operations of the library as a whole. From the trustees piece of the equation, I would not consider the trustees piece of the organization to be overly complicated. Over the years, there really haven't been a ton of changes to, in terms of new revenue streams, things of that nature, exotic transactions or anything like that. So I would consider the complexity of the trustees to be a little bit on the lower scale. And so from that perspective, you may be questioning over the years, well, sometimes we have light management letters or maybe not a management letter here and there. One thing to keep in mind, again, the complexity is somewhat low. You've had the same accounting and finance staff leaders for a long time now, which is a great thing. And so because of that, there's only so much that we can poke and prod at in terms of improvements. I mean, obviously, every year we take a fresh mindset in terms of things that we observe that could be improved. But I think it's that lack of complexity and just that continuity that you've had in accounting and finance that sort of makes the trustees a pretty stable organization to audit every year.
Questions? Matt, what are the, as you work with us throughout the years, what, and if you do a look back, what has been the most challenging that you've had to tackle with us, and what was the outcome of it?
If I were to be fair, I think probably several years ago, and I take, part of the blame for this. There was some pushback on some of the IT comments that we had through our manager letter process. And I think that was just the nature of, there were a lot of different people that we were dealing with on the IT side. There has been some fluctuation in that area over the years. And I think it was just a matter of needing to talk out the comments that we had written to sort of get on the same page. But there was sort of a few years ago, I think a little bit of a pushback on some of the things that we were recommending on the IT side. But I think that was just a matter of, needing to discuss the issues with more people to get a better perspective on it. So that was probably sort of stands out, off the cuff as maybe the biggest challenge that we've had with the library the past couple of years. Otherwise, I have found it to be very enjoyable to work with the library. Again, we've had the continuity with Sean. Ellen wasn't there when we first started, but a couple of years after we started, so Ellen's been around for a while. Really, it's been very enjoyable working with the library.
I think, I had a question about how do you maintain, you've been working with us for a long time. And then, so you're saying that, in order to make us comfortable in terms of professional distance from an audit perspective, completely switch the team. What is, if you've done that in the past, what are the challenges, or, what are the things to keep in mind when that happens?
In terms of like, if you were to go with the rotation team?
Yeah, if you were completely to flip the team.
Yeah, what I would say,
considerations.
What I would say is that it's not anywhere near the considerations of changing an audit firm, because at least, if Jen and Sarah were to come onto the audit team, we already have all the documentation of your internal controls. We're going to update that every year, but we already have a foundation there. It's not like you're going to be coming in and saying, well, I've got to completely relearn the library. But what it does do is it does, you say fresh set eyes. Well, what does that mean? It's a cliche. But what it is it's somebody who might come in and say, well, yeah, you've been doing this for the past couple of years, but I actually think you could be doing it better. Whereas maybe for me, having been in the audit, something routine that I sort of just would look at and say, well, I don't view that as really any kind of issue. Maybe somebody else who had, comes in again with a fresh set of eyes might say, actually, you know what? I see this, and this as areas for improvement that maybe I wouldn't see. I think it's just the nature of, being with a client for a period of time. But in terms of transition, it's not anywhere near as difficult as transitioning to a completely new audit firm who really doesn't know anything about you in terms from an audit perspective and really has to kind of start from scratch. So from that perspective, I think you kind of get the best of both worlds in that you do get some different perspectives from new people, but yet at the same time, from Sean and Ellen's perspective, the other people who have to deal with the audit, it's not like you're going to be dealing with people who are, again, starting from scratch. We do have that foundation that we have from the past 10 years.
Okay. Any other questions? I do have another question. I don't believe that the RFP was specific in terms of, DEI efforts. So can you tell me about what your firm is doing in terms of, ensuring diversity and inclusion?
Yes, I know we recently, over the past year, hired a chief DEI officer to head up those operations. I should know this off the top of my head, but I know we were awarded some sort of award recently. I forget from what publication about our DEI efforts over the past year. I'm not personally involved in those from a big picture perspective as a company, but I know that that's something that is very important to us and something that efforts that we've ramped up over the past year or so. And I even recently committed to, again, it's not really my area of expertise, but I committed myself to educating myself more about DEI efforts and how I can personally help with those efforts. So I know it's a major initiative within the firm, and I know that we're putting a lot of effort into that and have actually been recognized by outside organizations for the amount of effort that we've put into DEI.
Any more questions? No? All right. Well, Matt, always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. And again,
Thank you so much.
Reach out if any questions come up through your decision-making process. Please reach out.
We will do. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
All right, take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye.
Sean Monahan is reaching out right now to Jim Wilkinson from Markham LLP. Just give him a couple of minutes to join. I feel like I'm on an elevator right now.
Ellen, how long has CLA been the library's auditors?
11
10
years.
years.
11
Oh,
years,
11?
okay.
I thought it was 9. That can't be right. 11?
I believe so. I'll double check my notes. I've been here 9 years and he said they had it before me. So, and they were on board. You guys had O'Connor and Drew, and I think they were at least a year. I think they were at least on their second year when I got here. So I was never here for O'Connor and Drew. So that would be more than 9 years.
And I do remember O'Connor and Drew, even though I wasn't.
We sent
Okay.
the bid to them. They chose not to bid. They did. I think they're consolidating with bigger business because they just pulled out of the funds audit.
I just wanted to let everyone know that Mr. Wilkinson from Markham has joined us. Mr. Wilkinson, you're welcome to unmute yourself. And just for the ease of the presentation, I will be forwarding it. So just let me know next slide. Just say Pamela, next slide.
Okay. I know my colleague Kyle Connors will also be joining. I've got a,
Okay.
I need to leave for in a little bit this, but we'll tackle this as we go.
Okay. And if he happens to, I don't see him right now, but if he happens to be in the public side, just let me know and we can certainly.
I did send him the same link that I received from Jay.
That may not work. Let me see. We'll figure that out. Go right ahead. I will send him. I think we have him. Yes, we do. We have him. Here we go.
Okay.
All right. So welcome.
Hi, good morning.
Great. Good morning, everyone. We did put together a brief slide deck. It's 7 or 8 slides, kind of summarizing our proposal. I know you've read the proposal, reviewed it. So I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this. This is more an obligation by our marketing team who wants to make sure we look our best and summarize stuff up nicely. So if you could go to the next slide, we can briefly run through these. As you read the proposal, Markham is one of the top 15 firms in the country. We do have a specialized set of practices in nonprofit and governmental auditing. We do a lot of work in that space. Kyle and I primarily work in Rhode Island, although we do get up through Maine, Massachusetts, and Connecticut as well with clients in this sector. And we've been happy to have the opportunity to submit a proposal and speak with you this morning on our qualifications. Next slide. Again, as all CPA firms, we adhere to a set of principles, the primary being independence and integrity. We need to make sure that we're independent with our clients to render our opinions so that they're meaningful and are recognized in the marketplace. That, along with our commitment to quality, we're certainly inspected by a number of regulatory agencies, the PCAOB, DOL, GAO comes in occasionally, as well as our own independent peer review. confirming that our commitment to quality is certainly at the top of our priorities. I think what makes us different from a national firm is that all of our offices are the size of a regional CPA firm. So we're not, we don't have offices where everybody's just a number and you know, we lose that impersonal touch. You know, certainly our engagement teams are manageable size. We build relationships with our clients, and we aim to be a resource for our clients, not only during the audit period, but as questions and concerns with either new standards or regulations come up, to be a sounding board and be able to give feedback and give some value add back to our clients in that regard. Next slide. Again, we already talked about the commitment to quality and all of our regulatory reviews. We can skip right past this one. And then at this one, I think at this point, I'll turn the presentation and the rest of the Q&A period over to Kyle. Kyle's a director in our nonprofit and municipal group. He's got 13 years of experience, leads many engagements of similar size and scope as Boston Public Library's engagement. At this point, I apologize. I do need to run. I did have a conflict that I thought this was going to run up against, and actually, it's certainly happening that way. So I will leave you in Kyle's capable hands, and I'm sure he can answer questions. And we look forward to your decision and hopefully working with you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So as Jim alluded to, I've got 13 years working in nonprofit in the municipal sector. And what's nice about Markham is our teams focus on industries as they move on through their careers. So we don't have a lot of generalists. We have groups that are dedicated to specific industries, being nonprofit and municipal, which is our social sector group, with nonprofit and GASB standards rapidly changing and becoming more difficult to navigate. We're able to keep a pulse on these changes by being so industry driven. Right now, we're working with the Rhode Island Auditor General to assist the state in uniformly adopting GASB 87 for leases and also GASB 96 for subscription-based IT arrangements. Move to the next slide. So overall, our audit approach is very risk-oriented, which is based off of the planning portion of our audit. Certainly, as we get to know the library better, we'll tailor our audit toward the areas that management and governance know may be higher risk. So prior to the pandemic, an area like e-subscriptions for the library may not have been as prevalent. Certainly, as we move to a remote setting where the people weren't able to come into the library, the e-subscriptions rose, and that is an area of the audit that we would certainly want to look at. So the approach is always changing. Along with that, our approach to the audit is also changed. We moved into a virtual audit setting for the better part of 2 years. We've kind of moved past that, and we have a mix of clients, some that prefer that we perform our audit on site, some that still want us to work remotely. We have an inflow tool, which I'll get into, that helps us do both. We can be flexible, especially in a first year audit. We would probably prefer to be on site, but that doesn't mean that we can't make it work remotely if that's what the library would prefer. We can move on to the next slide. This is our inflow tool, and our clients love it, and so do we. So this serves as our request list for items in order to get the audit done. We have it split into two sections, our planning section and our fieldwork section. And it's a very descriptive list of the items that we'll need in order to meet certain milestones throughout the audit. And it's great for a couple of reasons. It keeps us organized. I think there's probably nothing more frustrating from the auditee perspective than having the auditors ask you for the same item over and over and over again. This does a really great job of preventing that from happening because it's very organized. You can also add on into this inflow anyone from the board or from governance that would like to have an idea of where things stand with the audit at any point in time. They can, rather than asking, they can go into inflow and take a look and see, okay, we're 70% done. So when an item is submitted to you, you'll see it. It'll have a description of what we're looking for. When it's uploaded and provided, we'll review it. And if it's exactly what we're looking for, we'll mark it off as completed. If maybe we wanted something a little bit different or we want an additional request, we'll bounce that back over to you. I think that we could use this as a really useful tool in setting up meetings with the accounting supervisor, with the CFO, using it as a means of setting milestones in order to reach the audit objectives. Move on to the next slide. So in reading through the library's request for proposal, one of the areas that I noted there was a lot of emphasis on was internal controls, and certainly excuse me, welcoming any recommendations for improvement that we may have. We'll certainly look at transaction cycles, whether it's cash disbursements, payroll, grant drawdowns, as important controls transactions, and also segregation of duties and journal entries as part of the entity level control settings. But what I think is really critical, especially now post-pandemic, or hopefully post-pandemic, is integrating our review of the IT system and the financial reporting system and the library's controls within PeopleSoft, I believe you use. So, as much as we'll be looking at transaction cycles, we'll also be looking at IT and reviewing and making sure that there's proper safeguards for the prevention of ransomware attacks, which are happening more and more nowadays. So that's something I wanted to bring up as well. If we can move on. Whether we're performing the audit remotely or in person, communication is certainly key to getting the audit done and meeting deadlines. We want to avoid our surprises. We don't want to wait until the end of the audit to let you know that we found a deficiency or an area for improvement. We want to communicate that with you along the way. And I think using the inflow tool, as I described before, would be great in setting up our milestone meetings and maintaining communication throughout the audit process. Move on. We recognize transitioning to a new audit firm has its challenges. We will have our team facilitate that for you. We'll make it seamless. Typically speaking, the prior firm will allow us to reach out, to meet with them, to gather the work papers that you've provided to them in the prior year. And hopefully we can spend our time at the beginning of the audit getting to know you rather than trying to get documents that the audit firm would otherwise have. We move on. Overall, our industry focus and expertise, along with our large firm resources and local feel, make us a great fit for the library. And we would be happy to answer any questions they might have for us.
All right, thank you, Kyle. All right, questions from the committee.
Kyle, just a personnel question. First of all, thank you to you and James for presenting. We didn't get to hear your roles in the firm, and would you be the individuals that we get to work with, or would you oversee, and how does personnel get assigned?
Sure, absolutely. I would be the person who was on site day to day performing the audit with my team. The other individual who was on the proposal couldn't be with us at the meeting today, Christine Kolov. She and I have been working together for the better part of 12 years. So she would be on site with me. And then we would have our staff and senior staff and potentially some interns that we'd be training along the way. And then Jim would be on, available for meetings, available for providing insight in any challenging areas. He may not be as on site day to day as I would be, but certainly would be available in a managing role.
And our overall financial operations include us as a city department of the city of Boston, and the focus of this audit as a separate operation is really the trustee side of the operation. So just like your comments on that complexity and basically how to stay focused on what's in scope, but at the same time not entirely ignore the other interdependencies.
Yeah, absolutely. We work with a lot of state component units in Rhode Island. So we certainly understand the importance of timely reporting, of communication with the state, or in this case, with the city. I know that there are some liability, or there was a liability in the books last year due to the city So I'm sure there's some communication and reconciling that with them and making sure that you're showing the appropriate balances there as well.
And what gives you most pause in looking at our opportunity? Nothing to scare you away, I'm sure, but perhaps something that stands out as being interesting or or challenging.
Sure. Yeah, it's not often that we see a 501c3 that's reporting governmental accounting standards. So that certainly brings a unique atmosphere to this particular audit. And I think just, at this point, hopefully, like I said, hopefully post-pandemic, just getting to back to operations and trying to see how the library is performing compared to pre-pandemic or what's changed due to, the global pandemic and what, how operations stand compared to where they were before.
And obviously, even with what we perceive as our own complexity, even if that's not complexity from your point of view, translates to the real importance of deadlines, given that we are a component organization of the city, and that there's at least one other 501c3 that's technically, at least traditionally, a component organization from a financial reporting point of view to us. So just your comments on that challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think is it the Boston Public Library Fund, which is your component unit.
Right.
So it kind of it's like an inception. They roll into you, and then you roll into the city's audit. I think Inflow serves as the best tool that we can bring as far as setting deadlines. We're able to set dates on when we would need certain documents by in order to meet the deadlines that we talk about in our meetings in advance. And as much as it holds your feet to the fire in providing those documents to us, once they've been provided, it holds our feet to the fire to provide you with a deliverable. So I think it keeps both of us organized and keeps the audit deadline in mind.
Right. And you made reference to IT both as a component of your work, but also as potential for value add. Again, given the complexity, I'm presuming that the scope of that really relates to IT systems that directly affect financial controls or points of entry into the overall system.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a questionnaire that we use as our base starting point during the audit, which has a fair amount of questions that kind of point toward your financial reporting system and user rights within the system, but also when employees are hired or dismissed, how their rights are changed. We certainly offer value add on top of the audit that could, we can provide phishing emails and provide a system, a cybersecurity assessment that would probably be outside of the audit, but we have a team that specializes in those areas that we'd be happy to discuss with you as well.
Great, thank you.
Question that I have for you, Kyle. What is it that you do to ensure that the controls and segregations of duty are sufficient? And can you provide some examples of suggestions you made to your clients in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. It really depends on the size of the engagement. We work with a range of clients from small to large. Certainly on the smaller end, one of the challenges is just not inherently having a lot of people involved in all of the transaction cycles and trying to layer in either board members or council members in order to provide approvals or just an area where one person isn't responsible for multiple key internal controls within a transaction cycle. So getting to know you as we walk through those cycles, determining who has the authority and who has, who's reviewing, will provide us with an opportunity to either let you know that, your segregation of duties appears reasonable, or there may be room for improvement.
Examples from your clients? You don't need to name clients.
Sure, yeah. We were just working with a utility district who They had great internal controls over their cash receipts and their billings. One area that they didn't was that the finance director had free reign to make journal entries, and there was no one to review and approve them because the superintendent didn't care to be involved in the financial reporting system and wanted to focus more on operations. So that was an area where we noted, here's not that the person was doing anything incorrectly, but here's an area where you could improve, because if no one's reviewing journal entries, then it would be very easy to commit fraud. So we made the recommendation. They got one of their board members involved who was financially literate and provided a biweekly review of any journal entries that were posted to the system.
Thank you. In your proposal, there was an extensive description of DEI efforts. Can you talk to us about diversity and inclusion in your firm?
Absolutely. I'm very proud of our CEO, who has done a great job of putting together a diversity group within the firm. We highlight and we spotlight our DEI members, multiple members a month, kind of give a background on their history, how they got into the firm, what drew them to Markham, and certainly what in their life has provided challenges. We also have a wide range of staff in our Providence and Boston offices, certainly working with female partners and with individuals from all walks of life that make us a good group of people to work with. Another area that I've been proud of our firm too is the initiative to provide scholarships to inner city schools to get them into accounting. I think one of the challenges that our industry faces is access point of getting into auditing, getting into tax from a perspective of younger people. It's not necessarily offered in all schools. It's not really promoted as an opportunity or promoted as a career until college. And so we've done a good job of nationally working with schools at the high school level to promote our firm and promote the field.
Any more questions?
Kyle, I noticed, thank you so much for your presentation and for talking about your firm. In the list of clients that you, in the proposal, notice there's a heavy focus on Rhode Island. And so just curious about your presence in Massachusetts.
Sure, absolutely. Certainly on the municipal side, we've got a larger focus in Rhode Island than we do in Massachusetts. So I've been with Markham for about 3.5 years, and I was with another firm for 10 years prior. So prior to joining Markham, I was in Massachusetts, and I mostly had municipal experience working with cities, Taunton, New Bedford, Attleboro, a much more Massachusetts-based set of clients. We are working towards becoming more present in Massachusetts, working with Brockton at the moment and their redevelopment authority. And I know that we have some nonprofit organizations in Massachusetts as well. So, I think the work that we do in Rhode Island and the work that we do in, we've got some clients in Maine as well. The overarching standards for FASB and GASB translate.
Sure,
there's a significant difference from that perspective.
Yeah. And then also just talk a little bit about, I saw there were a number of school districts and stuff, and that seems consistent with your comments before about the challenges of internal controls in a small organization. Obviously not an issue for the Boston Public Library. So talk a little bit about your experience with larger clients and managing the complexity of a large complex organization like the library.
Sure. Again, I think the basic principles are similar. It's mapping out who's responsible for what areas. I mean, having the ability to have multiple people involved in transaction cycles is huge and beneficial to the library. That doesn't necessarily mean because you have a lot of people that there isn't room for improvement in certain areas. And so I think it's just a matter of getting to know the library and its functions, seeing how whether it's the accounting supervisor or the CFO, are involved in all aspects of the financial areas, and certainly potentially making recommendations for improvement.
Thank you.
Do you foresee any challenges? As you said, we're sort of a quasi entity, so we are government, we're also nonprofit. Do you see any challenges that your firm is going to experience with that?
It's certainly unique. I wouldn't say that there's any challenges or anything that I think we wouldn't be able to accomplish. Again, we've got a dedicated group who is very focused on both FASB and GASB standards as it relates to nonprofits and governments. So we have our finger on the pulse of everything that's changing. Leases are a big area that we're on the precipice of implementing moving forward. I don't know the impact that might have on the library, but I think we will certainly be able to navigate the uniqueness.
Right, and we need to wrap it up. Any last questions? No?
Thank you.
All right. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. All right. All right, so now I'm gonna open up the mic committee to just some deliberations about what are your impressions of these firms? And don't make me go around the horn. I'll call people out. So who wants to be first?
I'm happy to go first. I was a little, so I guess I had a question for you, Ellen, about sort of your comfort with the level of service that we've been getting from CLA in terms of attention and timeliness and so forth. And then my reaction to Markham is that I think they're an interesting organization. I worry that they don't really have the list of representative clients that they provided didn't really have any client on the scale of the library. So
Sure.
I'm curious about CLA.
We've been happy with CLA. We do understand that sometimes you need to change audit firms. CLA has done a perfectly good job for us. We thought both proposals were good. And just if I could, to take a step back to explain how this will work, typically on an RFR, there are two components to it. The technical review of the proposals that we do, we grade, and then we open the financials. And then when we would come to the trustees for a vote with our recommendation. Okay. Because in this instance, the trustee interview is a key component. We actually don't have a recommendation yet. So we haven't opened the cost proposals. I assume these are likely going to be over $100,000 for 3 years, which would mean this would be a recommendation to the full board, but I don't know that. I won't know that until you folks sort of make your value-based decision. I will say that Sean and I did evaluate the technical components, and we graded them both advantageous for a lot of it, for things like project management, key personnel, firm resources. We think on that, there's not a lot of room to say someone is better than the other. You either have the appropriate staff or you don't. Where we graded Markham higher was on some of the things that they discussed, DEI, the fact that they offer training for our employees, and then the fact that they talked more about the GASB standards and the changing GASB standards. But so I think we're open to whatever the trustees' decision is. As I say, we've been happy with CLA, but we understand sometimes you make changes.
I think procedurally there's substantial merit in periodically making a change, particularly when it comes to financials and audit controls, even if there's no material basis for concern with the underlying reality. And I must say, I didn't like Matt's particular answers to this rotating team as an alternate way of dealing with that objection.
Yeah.
Curious what David, what didn't you like about it? Just
I don't have confidence in that being a real change based upon the way he talked about it. I think it's a change of players and it's a change of the people we see, but I don't know that it actually gets at the underlying reality of what one looks for when one is switching horses entirely, to use that analogy, which it means that you're actually ensuring that the biases of the firm are changed in a way that bring to light any new issues or things that are maybe missed. It's what we're really looking for if we're going down that road, is a change in methodology or a way to sanity check what has been the case for the last 10 years.
Senator?
And Ellen, who's the city's auditor?
I'm sorry?
Who's the city's auditor? Do we know?
Off my head, top of my head, I don't. It's one of the big firms, and then it's similar to the state. They have a lot of subs that work it.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. I guess if it's not broken, don't fix it is kind of my first impression. And if current auditing has been going fairly well, I guess, that chalks up a point in my view to continue in that same direction, especially where, everything is changing so rapidly, to be able to have that, kind of a comfort zone, comfort relationship, in knowing you've worked with somebody in the past who has, the insight into how the city works. So I think that's invaluable. There's no learning curve. I think that's important. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective, and I've always been a Matt advocate, but I have to say, and I would love to talk to Matt, I was disappointed with the presentation. I think, years past in his proposals, he's been a lot stronger.
Okay.
The other thing one of the things that concerns me is, when I took on this committee, we had a lot of audit findings that, we eventually were able to prioritize and work through. But year over year, there has been little findings. And that sort of makes me wonder if, to David's point, do we need a different approach? Because I know we're good, but I always say, yeah, we're not that good. So,
Hey now.
So sorry, Ellen, but so, I mean, that's a part that concerns me. And when I asked, he's been with us for a long time. And when I asked, can you give me, a situation that was challenging? And I do specifically remember that instance that he mentioned. It was all miscommunication. They were putting things in the management letter that were not discussed, and it was all miscommunication. And to his point, they had to go back and further discuss to flush it out. And it's something that it could have been avoided. So, finding that it's, that was what he called out. I was like, yeah, I do remember that. So, and it was not pushed back. It was more of, you need to talk things through, type of situation. So I'm going to go around the horn and ask, who would you vote for? And I'm going to guess, Senator Rush, that you're proposing CLA.
I guess based on the brief, I'd like to get a little bit more data always. And I think based on the presentations, pretty easily we could do pros and cons in a couple of columns here. And again, being fairly new, folks here have a lot more experience dealing with the current firm, and certainly I am definitely interested in further discussion. But based on today's very brief presentations and still being fairly new.
Right. All right.
I
We're
wasn't
gonna let you
wowed.
pull
I guess I wasn't wowed either way, so.
I'll let you pull the newbie card, okay?
I'm calling the newbie card.
You call the newbie card. Okay. Najid?
I think maybe similar to the senator, I wasn't blown away by either presentation, and Matt did feel like he was a little bit just sort of, dialing it in. And I am worried about Markham's ability to handle a client sort of the size of the library. My organization, we recently, about a year and a half ago, moved to a new audit firm, and that first year there's a lot of kind of roses and unicorns, and it's all very exciting, and then it gets hard, and we've experienced that, and a lot of it is around staffing. It's really hard to find auditors and accountants these days, so we've had issues there. So a little bit, I think, as you were saying before, if it's not broken, don't fix it. On the other hand, I'm a staunch believer in the need to bring on different firms at least once every 10 years, and we're past that point. So I guess maybe on balance, I would move towards a new firm, but I just caution it's not always the panacea.
Right. Ellen, I have a question. If we do a contract, are we locking in a certain number of years? Are we doing it?
We did this for 3 years. So absent, a problem with them where we could try to get out of it, we have a 3-year commitment.
Right. So repeat that again. If we have a problem, what?
So you can break a contract if you have an issue. But absent an issue, we bid this as a 3-year contract, and we will award it as a 3-year contract.
And what would be considered an issue?
Pretty significant displeasure. So if we thought they were failing to perform, we'd have to, I think, work with legal counsel on that. But there are outs in contracts.
Okay. In the proposal, and I can't remember if I saw any, were there any reference letters?
We did check references.
You did. Can you speak about that?
Sean checked them. I think Sean is on the call. He said they were all quite good. Sean, can you jump on?
Hold on, I can open his mic for him. Just need you to unmic yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, they were actually all very good. Very effusive, actually, all of them across on both sides. I think with the Markham, people went to a little more detail about their walkthrough and their internal controls a little bit that they went into, but all of them on both sides were very, very complimentary, which you kind of expect. They give you 3. They're not going to give you references that will give you a bad reference. But
Sean, for Markham, were the references like school districts, or were they larger?
They were Rhode Island. These are on my thing. Agencies. They were all in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
They were seemed to be small nonprofits. In one town.
Okay.
I do think it's worth reminding us all that it is the trustee side of our operation that they are the auditors for, and not the entirety. Even though, as my question earlier to Markham indicated, I do think there are some interdependencies not to ignore. But it is the $6-9 million side of the operation rather than the whole $50 million side of the operation that we're auditing. If that helps make this more of an apples to apples comparison.
Yep. All right. David.
I mean, Evelyn, you were asking for.
You're a voting member of the team, so.
I think it's time for a change. I found Markham's presentation and proposal impressive. There are some concerns as we move to a new area. I think the answers and the material based upon their DEI presence were better than what either Matt said or that was absent from his proposal. And honestly, I do think CLA has claimed that many of the value add services were more material than they were in fact were. In fact, I think several of the things he cited were things we were already in the process of doing anyway. So if we were making it about the value add services, I'd have an even stronger opinion. But it's clearly this is about the core audit and not the value add services. But I would propose going with Markham. I think it's time for change.
Ellen, before I call for, for a vote, do you and Sean want to talk a little bit more about the evaluation that you did, and can we get a little bit more insight into that?
Sure. The technical
You had
proposal, as I said, asked you to list your firm resources, total number of employees assigned to the engagement, the nature and names, number of the professional staff. Also asked your performance issues about performance. Have you ever failed to complete any work awarded in the last 15 years, whether or not you use subcontractors, insurance requirements, and that sort of thing. So sort of basic competency questions. And then we read the rest of the proposals for sort of value added. We were struck by Markham's piece on diversity and inclusion. It was much more detailed. And we were, as I said, did find the fact that they offer training for our employees to be compelling. Sean, do you want to offer anything?
Yeah, I thought as far as the size of the firm, the technical ability of the firms, who they're going to put on the job, I think we're all similar. The whole thing approached the audit, I didn't see any difference at all. Where I did see a difference, and I expect to be a difference, if you go to Markham, you'll see a big difference in the management letter. And just as a warning, not that we're falling apart, if we get a lot of comments now, but I think they're going to do a more detailed walkthrough about our controls and segregation of duties, and I think you'll see some comments that we haven't seen in a while. They went to a more detail on that, on their proposal, and the DEI thing was pretty impressive. They do fundraisers for the Black CPA organizations. They do outreach at Howard University, that kind of stuff, and they seem to have a real commitment on that, and that was completely silent. The other thing I was surprised that they didn't mention the GASB 87, which is kind of a big deal. CLA, but Markham, of course, did. It's the big issue this year.
Okay. So now I'm going to call for a vote. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Alan. Any questions that the committee has for Sean or Alan before I call for a vote? No? Okay. So I'm going to do it this way. Pamela, you're going to help me out here. So I'm going to name the audit firm, and then I want a yes or a no. Is that the best? Or no, actually.
I was going to say I can just ask each of the panelists if
let's do it that way.
Yes. For, and then we'll tell you who they are at the end.
Okay, you got it.
Makes sense? Okay.
Gee, we only have 4 votes, so we could be split in the middle.
And we'll figure it out from there. So
okay.
This is for the award management of the audit review firm. So if you could just let me know if you prefer CLA or Markham, and I will mark it down accordingly.
Thank you.
Okay. Arana Ortiz.
Markham.
Fowl.
Markham.
Which one was that? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Markham.
Markham, okay. David Leonard.
Markham.
And Rush.
Markham.
Well, I think you've heard it.
It is good
We will ask Jane to
Persuade me. There's very persuasive arguments. I get so persuaded.
Okay.
And Jane is still on, so Jane has the dollar figures. Absent a significant difference between them, it would be a vote for either to recommend Markham or to approve Markham. So Jane, if you could get us.
Hold on, I have to reopen.
So Markham is, Jane, could you
open her mic?
Open her mic, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so in opening the bids, Clifton Larson's 3-year bid is $91,500. Markham LLP's bid is $106,500.
So that requires full trustee approval. So this is a vote to recommend. I don't think over the course of a 3-year period, that's a significant difference.
It's like $30,000 a year for Clifton Larson and $35,000 for Markham. Is the 1 year, and then they each increase at $500 a year.
All right, so then the vote is to then recommend the full board approval of the auditors of Markham LLP.
I'll put that on the full board for May 24th.
Yes, right. So do we need to do a roll call for that?
Nope, I'm going to take as your vote. I don't think we need
Got
to-
it. Okay, got it. All right. Well, thank you all. And then let's wrap it up. For new business, one thing, in addition to the fire alarm contract, we may have to reconvene for some South End approval of contracts. As you all were aware, there's a situation of water and damage at the South End branch. So we may have to reconvene sometime in the summer to approve repairs after we've gone through the assessment. Anything else, Ellen, we want to add to that?
No, yes, I guess. That will be covered under one of the annual votes. So for folks who haven't been here for long, we break for, as you know, for a long period of time, from May to September. We learned a lesson during the mold outbreak of 2015 that we went ahead and acted and responded to that without trustee approval on any of those contracts because it was an emergency. Because of that, we've put in this new vote that anything that comes up over the summer will be delegated to finance and audit. This is a little bit, it has historically been a smaller committee, and so it's easier to get you folks together. So we won't need a vote to delegate that because it will be over the summer.
Any new business from any of the committee members? Okay, I take that as a no. All right, can we please open for public comment?
Yes, I only have two. The first was a written comment from David Vieira, who sent it in yesterday in preparation that he wasn't here in time. I sent it to each of you this morning. He had questions in regards to Mr. Mansberger's contract, in which he asked, he wondered if this was a workaround in regards to the, sorry, I'm trying to open it up as I'm trying to open up multiple things at the same time. He basically noted that it was awarded to, he had a question about why we were having a second contract, which I believe you answered in your presentation today. And he just knows that his professional skills and knowledge of the BPL operations was essential to his duties. I think he wasn't aware of what exactly the contract was for in regards to security, which we answered. But he just wondered if his item was being reviewed by the residency board and inspector general, if it was a workaround the residency board being a second contract. And that is that. We can certainly write back a written response to him. So there's no need to respond today. We can certainly write a response.
Happy to respond to it.
What's that?
Happy to respond to it later. To give you the information.
And the second is Alyssa Kadalik. So Alyssa, let me just open you up for a second here. I apologize. Just takes a second. Thank you for being patient with the time too. Just need you to unmic, Alyssa.
Folks hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So my name is Alyssa Kadalik. I'm president of AFSCME 1526. Like Mr. Vieira, I think in some ways, my concern is about the additional $50,000 for Kurt Mansberger. You know, back in September 2021, you awarded a $50,000 employee contract to him. He resigned from here, mainly what our understanding is because of the residency and his changes in life. And yet here we are 9 months later awarding another $50,000. And I would ask the trustees to take a look at the process and procedure of what we're doing to make sure we have people in place so that we are not awarding people who voluntarily resigned additional contracts. For example, we know that the applications manager is leaving in 2 months. He gave 9 months of notice to the Boston Public Library. His job has not yet gone out to bid, and he will be leaving in approximately 2 months. If we're hiring a consultant for the research collection manager position, And we know, and I've heard from the trustees, that IT positions are hard, especially where we do have a residency requirement. Salaries may not meet. There is no, at the moment, hybrid work. Then why aren't we also, instead of keeping Kurt on, why aren't we hiring a consultant to fill, to look for people to fill the server manager position, which has also been vacant for quite some time. And these are positions that are impacting. The other, this is a slap in the face of AFSCME members to allow someone you're giving $100,000 salary to. They don't have to live in the city of Boston. My members have to live in the city of Boston if they're not 10 years and out. They are not paid $100,000 a year for the most part. And they don't have the options to just walk away and then be awarded a contract like this. So instead of using these stopgap measures, why don't we actually look at filling these positions permanently and making sure that we have people in place to support the organization so that we don't need to do more of these employee contracts. Thank you for your time.
Melissa,
Anybody else?
and that was it.
That was it. Okay. All right. With that, if there's nothing else, we adjourn and we'll see each other in the annual meeting.
Yes, May 24th at 8:30 via Zoom.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be a time.
Thank you all. Okay, bye-bye.